Police car light stop, don't scroll. Because the 4 Jefferson Nickels I'm holding right now may look like ordinary 5-cent coins, but one of them could be the rare collectible that every coin hunter dreams of finding. What if I told you that some Jefferson Nickels have sold for thousands, and in rare cases, even hundreds of thousands of dollars because of their rarity, condition, or genuine mint errors? It sounds unbelievable. But for the right authenticated coin, it's absolutely possible. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're counting down the top 4 most valuable Jefferson Nickels ever discovered in the United States. These aren't just old 5-cent coins. They're hidden pieces of American history, each with an incredible story that has fascinated collectors for generations. In this video, you'll discover rare P, D, and S mint marks that collectors search for, valuable mint errors that can make certain nickels highly collectible, the history behind America's famous Jefferson Nickel, the key details every coin hunter should know before spending an old 5-cent coin. And here's the most surprising part. Some of these nickels look dirty. Some are scratched. Some have turned dark after decades of circulation. Most people would spend them without thinking twice. But experienced collectors know that appearances can be deceiving. A rare Jefferson Nickel with the right characteristics can become one of the most exciting discoveries in any collection. So before you spend another old 5-cent coin, watch this video until the very end. Because the next Jefferson Nickel you find could completely change the way you look at your pocket change. Now let's begin our countdown with coin number 1. The 1943 Jefferson War Nickel. The 5-cent coin that helped change history. Most people have held one, most people have spent one, and most people have absolutely no idea that one of the smallest coins ever produced by the United States Mint was born during one of the greatest conflicts in human history. Imagine this. You're cleaning out your grandfather's old toolbox. At the bottom of a dusty tin box, hidden beneath old screws and faded photographs, you find a dark gray 5-cent coin. It doesn't shine. It isn't gold. It isn't large. In fact, it looks like one of the most ordinary coins you've ever seen. You almost throw it into a jar with the rest of your spare change. But then you notice something unusual. Above the image of Monticello is a large P mint mark. The date reads 1943. Without realizing it, you've just picked up one of the most historic 5-cent coins ever produced by the United States Mint. Here's the question that fascinates collectors around the world. Why would the United States completely change the metal used in its 5-cent coin during World War II? By the end of this documentary, you'll understand not only why the 1943 Jefferson War Nickel exists, but also why it remains one of the most collected wartime coins in American history. This isn't simply a story about money. It's a story about sacrifice, innovation, patriotism, and a nation willing to change even its everyday pocket change to support the war effort. To understand this remarkable coin, we have to travel back to one of the most difficult periods of the 20th century. The year was 1943. The world was engulfed in World War II. Across Europe, massive armies battled across cities, forests, mountains, and coastlines. In the Pacific, fierce naval battles stretched across thousands of miles of ocean. Factories that once produced automobiles and household appliances were transformed into military production centers. Every day, thousands of tanks rolled off assembly lines. Aircraft filled the skies. Ships launched from American shipyards in record numbers. The United States needed enormous quantities of raw materials. Steel, copper, aluminum, rubber, and one metal that became especially important: nickel. Nickel wasn't simply another industrial material. It was essential for producing military equipment, specialized steel, armor plating, machinery, and countless wartime components. As demand increased, government officials realized they needed to conserve every possible supply. That created an unexpected challenge. America's 5-cent coin contained nickel. Every coin struck by the United States Mint used a metal desperately needed elsewhere. The government faced an important decision. Should valuable nickel continue to be used in everyday coins? Or should it be redirected to support soldiers fighting overseas? The answer changed American coin history forever. Late in 1942, the United States Mint introduced an entirely new alloy for the Jefferson nickel. Instead of the traditional composition, the coin would now be struck using 35% silver, 56% copper, and 9% manganese. It was an extraordinary decision. For the first and only time in Jefferson nickel history, millions of circulating 5-cent coins would contain silver. These special issues quickly became known as war nickels. Among them, one date stands above the rest: the 1943 Jefferson War Nickel. Today, collectors recognize it immediately. Not because it is made of gold, not because every example is extremely valuable, but because it represents a remarkable chapter in American history. Now turn the coin over. Look closely at the reverse. You'll see Monticello, the historic Virginia home of Thomas Jefferson. Then look just above the building. There's a large letter P. That tiny letter tells an enormous story. Before the War Nickel series, the Philadelphia Mint generally did not place a mint mark on circulating coins. But during World War II, the Mint wanted people to easily identify these new silver alloy nickels. For the first time in American history, Philadelphia proudly placed a large P mint mark on a circulating coin. That decision transformed the appearance of the Jefferson nickel forever. Millions of these coins entered circulation almost immediately. They appeared in grocery stores, drug stores, movie theaters, railroad stations, restaurants, banks, military bases, and neighborhood businesses across America. Few people stopped to think about why their nickel looked different. To most Americans, it was simply another 5-cent coin. But history was quietly passing from one hand to another. Imagine a young soldier receiving one of these nickels as change before boarding a train. Imagine a mother using one to buy postage stamps for a letter sent overseas. Imagine factory workers carrying war nickels in their pockets while building aircraft that would help change the course of history. Every coin has a story. Every scratch represents another chapter. Every worn edge reminds us that this coin wasn't hidden inside a museum. It lived through history. More than 80 years later, collectors continue searching for these remarkable nickels. Not because every 1943 war nickel is rare. Not because every example is worth a fortune. But because each one is an authentic survivor from one of history's most important moments. And this is only the beginning. In the next chapter, we'll step inside the legendary Philadelphia Mint, discover how these wartime nickels were manufactured, meet the artists behind the Jefferson Nickel, and uncover the fascinating story of why this small 5-cent coin became one of the greatest symbols of America's wartime determination. The 1943 Jefferson War Nickel. Inside the Philadelphia Mint, how a wartime coin was born. The year was 1943, and the United States was fully committed to World War II. Across the country, factories worked day and night. Steel mills roared with activity. Shipyards launched new battleships almost every week. Aircraft factories assembled bombers and fighter planes around the clock. America had become known as the arsenal of democracy. Every factory had an important mission. But one factory had a responsibility unlike any other. The Philadelphia Mint. Founded in 1792, the Philadelphia Mint is the oldest federal mint in the United States. For more than 2 centuries, it has produced billions of American coins that have passed through the hands of generations. By 1943, its mission had become more important than ever. The mint wasn't simply making money. It was helping support a nation at war. Every day, trains delivered tons of metal to the mint. Inside the building, powerful furnaces melted carefully measured alloys. Engineers worked with precision because the War Nickel's composition had changed completely. Instead of the traditional nickel alloy, these new 5-cent coins contained 35% silver, 56% copper, and 9% manganese. The change may sound simple today, but in 1943, it required months of research, testing, and planning. The new alloy had to be durable enough for everyday circulation. It also needed to function properly in vending machines, public telephones, and coin-operated equipment across America. Once the metal was prepared, it was rolled into long strips under enormous pressure. Special machines punched thousands of perfectly round coin blanks from each strip. These blanks, known as planchets, were carefully cleaned and heated before striking. Then came the most exciting stage. The planchets traveled beneath massive coin presses, capable of producing hundreds of coins every minute. With tremendous force, hardened steel dies stamped both sides of the coin at exactly the same time. In less than a second, a blank piece of metal became a Jefferson War Nickel. On the front appeared the familiar portrait of Thomas Jefferson, the 3rd President of the United States and the principal author of the Declaration of Independence. Jefferson had long been admired as one of America's greatest statesmen. His belief in liberty, education, and democratic government helped shape the nation. The Jefferson Nickel itself had first been introduced in 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel. Its designer, Felix Schlag, created a dignified left-facing portrait of Jefferson that remains one of the most recognizable designs in American coinage. Turn the coin over and you'll find Monticello, Jefferson's famous Virginia estate. Monticello wasn't simply a beautiful home. It reflected Jefferson's lifelong interest in architecture, science, agriculture, and innovation. Today it stands as one of America's most important historic landmarks. But during World War II, another small detail became far more important than the building itself. Look directly above Monticello. There you'll see the large P mint mark. That single letter changed American coin history. Before 1942, Philadelphia generally did not place its mint mark on circulating coins. The War Nickel changed that tradition. The oversized P allowed banks, businesses, and the mint itself to immediately recognize the new silver alloy nickels. Today, collectors can identify a genuine Philadelphia War Nickel within seconds simply by spotting that distinctive mint mark. As millions of these coins rolled off the presses, inspectors carefully examined production. Even with strict quality control, no manufacturing process is perfect. Occasionally, tiny mistakes occurred. Most were discovered and removed before the coins left the mint. But a small number escaped into circulation. Those genuine mint-made errors would one day become fascinating discoveries for collectors. Meanwhile, the vast majority of 1943 P War Nickels entered everyday commerce. Children received them as lunch money. Families used them to buy groceries. Soldiers carried them in their pockets. Factory workers spent them after long shifts producing military equipment. These coins became silent witnesses to one of the most important periods in American history. Today, when collectors hold a 1943 War nickel, they aren't just holding 5 cents. They're holding a coin that circulated while history was unfolding. A coin struck at a time when every decision, even changing the metal inside a nickel, was made to help support the war effort. But the story doesn't end there. Because more than 80 years later, these coins continue to surprise collectors. Some have survived in extraordinary condition. Some display beautiful, natural tunning. And a few contain genuine, mint-made varieties and striking errors that have made them especially desirable. In the next chapter, we'll explore those fascinating mint errors, explain how professional grading works, and discover why the 1943 Jefferson War Nickel remains one of the most beloved wartime coins in American numismatics. The 1943 Jefferson War Nickel. Why collectors still search for this wartime nickel today. More than 80 years have passed since the first 1943 Jefferson War Nickels rolled off the presses at the Philadelphia Mint. World War II has become history. The factories have fallen silent. The soldiers returned home long ago. But the little 5-cent coin they once carried continues to survive. Today, thousands of collectors across the United States search through old coin jars, inherited collections, estate sales, antique shops, and bank rolls, hoping to discover another authentic war nickel. Why? Because every 1943 war nickel tells a story that no modern coin can. It represents sacrifice, innovation, patriotism, and one of the few moments in American history when the composition of everyday money changed to support a nation at war. If you find a 1943 Jefferson War Nickel, the first thing to remember is this. Not every war nickel is rare, and not every example is worth a fortune. Its value depends on several important factors. The first is condition. Coins with heavy circulation wear are common and are typically collected for their historical significance and silver content. Examples that retain strong original detail, attractive luster, or minimal wear are generally more desirable. Professional grading services such as PCGS and NGC evaluate coins using internationally recognized grading standards, giving collectors confidence in authenticity and condition. Another important feature is the full steps designation. Look closely at the steps of Monticello on the reverse. If the steps remain sharply defined and uninterrupted, a high-grade coin may qualify for this special designation, which is sought after by many Jefferson Nickel specialists. Collectors also look for genuine mint-made errors. These can include off-center strikes, clipped planchets, struck-through errors, or major die cracks. Authentic mint errors are much scarcer than ordinary post-mint damage and should always be authenticated before any conclusions are drawn. One mistake many beginners make is cleaning old coins. A naturally toned war nickel may appear dark gray, blue, gold, or nearly black after decades of storage. That natural appearance is often preferred by collectors. Cleaning can permanently damage the original surfaces and reduce collector appeal. If you discover an old war nickel, the safest approach is to leave it exactly as you found it. Sometimes, the most valuable feature of a coin is its originality. Although millions of 1943 war nickels were produced, truly exceptional certified examples are much scarcer today because most entered circulation during the war. Those survivors remind us that history isn't always preserved in museums. Sometimes it survives in ordinary pocket change. Perhaps that's what makes this coin so fascinating. It isn't famous because every example is extremely valuable. It's famous because it connects us directly to a defining moment in American history. Every scratch reflects years of use. Every worn edge reminds us that this coin passed through countless hands during a time when the world was changing. A child may have spent it on candy in 1944. A factory worker may have carried it after a long shift building aircraft. A soldier may have kept one in his pocket as a reminder of home. We'll never know the complete journey of any individual coin. And that's part of the mystery. The next time you come across an old Jefferson nickel, don't rush to spend it. Turn it over. Look above Monticello. If you see the large P mint mark and the date 1943, you've found a genuine piece of America's wartime history. Whether it's worth only a few dollars or considerably more depends on its condition, rarity, and authentication, but its historical importance is undeniable. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the remarkable story of the 1943 P. Jefferson War Nickel. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more fascinating stories about rare American coins, hidden mint errors, and the history behind the coins that millions of people overlook every day. Until next time, keep searching, keep learning, and remember, the next extraordinary discovery might already be hiding in your pocket change. The 1940 Jefferson Nickel, the 5-cent coin that started a legacy. The beginning of an American classic. Most people have seen one. Most people have spent one. And most people have no idea that an ordinary-looking 1940 Jefferson nickel could be one of the most fascinating coins in American history. Imagine opening an old wooden box that once belonged to your grandfather. Inside are faded photographs, military medals, handwritten letters, and a handful of old coins. Among them sits a worn 5-cent coin dated 1940. Its edges are smooth. Its surface has darkened with age. To most people, it's just an old nickel worth 5 cents. But to a collector, it's a small piece of American history, a coin that circulated during one of the most dramatic periods of the 20th century. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're exploring the incredible story of the 1940 Jefferson Nickel, a coin struck before America entered World War II, yet one that witnessed the nation transform forever. This isn't just a story about a 5-cent coin. It's the story of a country recovering from the Great Depression, preparing for an uncertain future, and producing a coin that millions of Americans would carry every day. The year was 1940. Across Europe, World War II had already begun. Although the United States had not yet entered the conflict, headlines filled newspapers with reports of battles overseas. At home, American factories were expanding production. The economy was improving after years of hardship. Families were rebuilding their lives, and every nickel mattered. A 5-cent coin could buy a newspaper, a candy bar, or help pay for public transportation. For millions of Americans, the Jefferson Nickel became part of everyday life. The Jefferson Nickel itself had only recently been introduced. In 1938, the United States Mint replaced the famous Buffalo nickel with a new design honoring Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States and the principal author of the Declaration of Independence. The coin's designer, Felix Schlag, created a dignified portrait of Jefferson on the obverse and placed Monticello, Jefferson's Virginia home, on the reverse. The design was simple, elegant, and immediately recognizable. By 1940, Jefferson nickels were being struck at 3 U.S. mints. Philadelphia, no mint mark. Denver, D. San Francisco S. Each mint produced coins for circulation across the country. Most 1940 Jefferson Nickels entered everyday commerce and were used for years. Many became heavily worn. Others were saved by collectors, creating a fascinating range of surviving examples today. The standard 1940 Jefferson nickel was struck in an alloy of 75% copper and 25% nickel. Unlike the wartime nickels introduced a few years later, the 1940 issue contains no silver. That makes it an important benchmark in the Jefferson Nickel series. The last years before World War II permanently changed the coin's composition. If you examine a 1940 Jefferson nickel closely, you'll notice Jefferson's calm expression and the detailed image of Monticello on the reverse. Collectors pay special attention to the sharpness of these details. One feature they especially admire is the full steps designation. On exceptional examples, the steps leading to Monticello remain fully visible and uninterrupted. These sharply struck coins are much scarcer than ordinary circulated pieces and are highly sought after. But that's only the beginning. Hidden among the millions of 1940 Jefferson nickels are fascinating die varieties, repunched mint marks on some mint-marked issues, striking differences, and beautifully preserved mint-state examples that continue to attract collectors around the world. In the next chapter, we'll travel inside the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints to discover how these nickels were produced, why 1940 became an important year in the Jefferson Nickel series, and what details experts examine when searching for outstanding examples. The 1940 Jefferson Nickel. Inside the U.S. Mint and the hidden details collectors love. To truly appreciate the 1940 Jefferson Nickel, we have to step back in time and imagine what America looked like more than 8 decades ago. It was a nation standing at a crossroads. The Great Depression was slowly fading into history, but uncertainty still filled the air. Across the Atlantic, World War II was expanding rapidly. Although the United States had not yet entered the conflict, the country was preparing for whatever the future might bring. During this historic period, the United States Mint continued producing the coins Americans depended on every day. Every nickel, dime, quarter, and penny was an important part of daily commerce. Among those coins was the 1940 Jefferson Nickel. Millions were struck at 3 different mints. The Philadelphia Mint produced coins without a mint mark. The Denver Mint struck coins bearing the D mint mark. The San Francisco Mint produced coins marked with the S. Each facility followed the same basic minting process. Large coils of copper-nickel alloy were rolled into thin sheets. Powerful presses punched perfectly round blanks from the metal. These blanks, known as planchets, were cleaned, heated, and polished before moving to the striking presses. Inside the press, hardened steel dies carrying Jefferson's portrait and the Monticello design struck each blank with enormous pressure. In less than a second, an ordinary piece of metal became an official United States coin. Thousands of nickels were produced every hour. Despite careful inspections, no minting process is perfect. Tiny differences appeared from die to die. Some coins received exceptionally sharp strikes. Others showed weaker details because the dies had begun to wear. Today, those small differences fascinate collectors. One of the most desirable characteristics is known as full steps. Look closely at the steps leading to the entrance of Monticello on the reverse. If the steps remain complete and uninterrupted, the coin may qualify for the full steps designation when graded by professional services. Finding a 1940 Jefferson nickel with full steps is far more difficult than many people realize. Years of circulation quickly wore away these tiny details. Even slight weakness during striking could prevent the designation. That is why beautifully preserved full steps examples are especially admired. Collectors also search for genuine mint varieties and mint-made errors. Some 1940D and 1940S nickels are known with repunched mint marks, where the mint mark was impressed more than once during die preparation. Others display die cracks, die chips, or other production characteristics that make them interesting to specialists. These are genuine mint-made features, not damage caused after the coin entered circulation. Understanding that difference is extremely important. A scratch, dent, cleaning mark, or corrosion does not make a coin rare. Professional collectors always separate mint-made varieties from post-mint damage. Another fascinating aspect of the 1940 Jefferson Nickel is its natural agging. Many examples have developed beautiful gray, gold, blue, or champagne-colored tunning over decades of storage. This natural tunning occurs as the metal slowly reacts with its environment. Every coin tones differently. Some remain bright for decades. Others become deep gray or display colorful rainbow patterns. Collectors generally prefer original, untouched surfaces. That's why experts recommend never cleaning old coins. Even gentle polishing can remove original mint luster and leave hairline scratches that reduce collector appeal. If you inherit an old coin collection or discover a 1940 Jefferson nickel in a family coin jar, the best approach is simple. Handle the coin carefully by its edges. Store it safely. Study its details. And if you believe it has an unusual variety or exceptional preservation, consider having it professionally authenticated. The 1940 Jefferson Nickel may appear ordinary, but every surviving example has traveled through history. Some purchased groceries during the final years before America entered World War II. Others passed through the hands of factory workers, shopkeepers, students, and families who could never have imagined that collectors would still treasure these coins more than 80 years later. That is the magic of numismatics. Every coin has a story. Every date represents a moment in history. And sometimes, an ordinary 5-cent piece becomes a remarkable connection to America's past. In the next chapter, we'll explore realistic collector values, famous high-grade examples, what makes some 1940 Jefferson nickels especially desirable today, and why this classic 5-cent coin continues to captivate collectors around the world. The 1958 D. Jefferson Nickel. The 5-cent coin that closed an era. Most people have held one, most people have spent one, and most people have absolutely no idea that a simple 1958 D. Jefferson Nickel represents the end of one of the most important decades in American history. Imagine reaching into an old coin jar that's been sitting untouched for years. Among the pennies, dimes, and quarters, one small 5-cent coin catches your eye. Its surface is dull. The edges are worn smooth. The date reads 1958. On the reverse, beside Monticello, you notice a small D mint mark. At first glance, it seems ordinary. Just another old nickel. But what if this little coin had traveled through America during one of its greatest periods of economic growth? What if it had passed through diners, gas stations, grocery stores, movie theaters, and family-owned businesses at a time when the nation was changing faster than ever before? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're exploring the fascinating history of the 1958 D. Jefferson Nickel, one of the last Jefferson nickels produced before the dramatic changes of the 1960s. This isn't simply a 5-cent coin. It's a time capsule, a survivor from an era of classic American automobiles, expanding highways, growing suburbs, and the early years of the space age. To understand this coin, we have to travel back to 1958. The United States was experiencing remarkable economic growth. Families were buying new homes. Television had become a part of everyday life. Large automobiles filled America's highways. Children carried nickels in their pockets to buy candy, comic books, soft drinks, and movie tickets. Although 5 cents may seem insignificant today, it had real purchasing power in 1958. Every Jefferson nickel worked hard in circulation. Millions passed from one hand to another every single day. The Denver Mint was one of the busiest coin-producing facilities in the country. Its responsibility was enormous. As Western states continued to grow, demand for circulating coinage increased rapidly. The Mint responded by striking millions of Jefferson nickels bearing the D Mint mark. These coins were produced using the traditional alloy of 75% copper and 25% nickel, the same composition that had been used for standard Jefferson nickels since their introduction in 1938, except during the Civil War Nickel years of World War II. The familiar portrait of Thomas Jefferson appeared on the obverse. Jefferson, the third President of the United States and principal author of the Declaration of Independence, symbolized the nation's commitment to liberty and democratic ideals. The reverse displayed Monticello, Jefferson's historic Virginia home, designed by artist Felix Schlag. Its elegant architecture has remained one of the most recognizable images in American coinage. Now turn your attention to the reverse. Just to the right of Monticello, you'll find the small D Mint mark. That tiny letter identifies the coin as having been struck at the Denver Mint, a facility known for producing billions of coins that circulated throughout the western United States. Most 1958 D Jefferson nickels entered circulation immediately. They purchased everyday necessities. They rode in cash registers. They filled piggy banks. They traveled across the country in pockets, purses, and wallets. Because they were used so heavily, many surviving examples show noticeable wear today. Yet hidden among the millions of ordinary nickels are beautifully preserved coins that continue to attract collectors. Some remain almost exactly as they left the mint. Others display strong original luster, sharp strikes, and the famous full steps detail on Monticello that specialists search for. Those exceptional survivors remind us that even common circulating coins can become treasured collectibles when preserved in outstanding condition. But the story of the 1958 D Jefferson nickel is only beginning. In the next chapter, we'll step inside the Denver Mint, explore how these nickels were manufactured, examine genuine varieties and collector favorites, and discover why this classic 5-cent coin remains an important part of every Jefferson nickel collection. The 1958 D Jefferson Nickel. Why collectors still search for this classic 5-cent coin. Welcome back. More than 6 decades have passed since the 1958 D Jefferson Nickel first entered circulation. The world has changed dramatically. Classic automobiles have become collectors' items. Drive-in theaters have largely disappeared. The space age transformed technology. Yet this small 5-cent coin continues to survive, quietly preserving a piece of American history. Today, thousands of collectors still search for the 1958 D Jefferson Nickel, not because every example is rare, but because finding a beautifully preserved coin from this era has become increasingly difficult. Most 1958 D nickels worked hard in circulation. They passed through grocery stores, restaurants, banks, movie theaters, gas stations, and family businesses for years. After decades of use, many coins became heavily worn. Jefferson's hair lost its fine detail. Monticello became smooth. The edges softened from countless exchanges. That's why collectors become excited when they discover a coin with sharp details and original mint luster. One of the first things specialists examine is the coin's condition. Does the coin still have its original surface? Has it been cleaned? Are the details still sharp? The better the preservation, the greater the collector interest. Another important feature is the famous full steps designation. Look carefully at the steps leading to the entrance of Monticello on the reverse. If the steps remain complete and clearly separated, a high-grade example may qualify for the full steps designation when certified by professional grading services. Because many 1958 D nickels were not struck perfectly and most circulated for years, full steps examples are much more difficult to find than ordinary circulated coins. Collectors also search for genuine mint-made varieties. Occasionally, coins may display die cracks, die chips, or other production characteristics created during the minting process. These are very different from scratches, dents, corrosion, or damage that occurred after the coin entered circulation. Learning to recognize the difference is one of the most valuable skills in coin collecting. Another feature that attracts attention is natural toning. Over many decades, copper-nickel coins can develop beautiful shades of gold, silver gray, champagne, blue, or even subtle rainbow colors. These colors form naturally as the coin ages. Many collectors appreciate original toning because every coin develops a unique appearance over time. However, experienced collectors usually avoid cleaned or artificially altered coins. Cleaning removes the original mint surface and can permanently reduce collector appeal. If you discover a 1958 D Jefferson Nickel in an old family collection, the best advice is simple. Handle it carefully by the edges. Store it in a protective holder. Compare it with trusted references. And if it appears unusually well preserved or shows a possible mint variety, consider professional authentication through a respected grading service. Now comes the question every beginner asks. Is my 1958 D Jefferson Nickel valuable? The answer depends on authenticity, condition, strike quality, and collector demand. Most circulated examples are modestly valued. Higher-grade uncirculated examples, especially those with exceptional strikes or the full steps designation, are generally much more desirable to collectors and can sell for substantially more than ordinary circulated pieces. Rather than focusing only on price, remember what makes this coin truly special. The 1958 D Jefferson Nickel represents an important period in American history. It circulated during a time of economic growth, expanding highways, new technology, and changing lifestyles. Every surviving coin has traveled its own unique journey through history. Perhaps it purchased a newspaper announcing historic events. Perhaps it bought a soda at a neighborhood diner. Perhaps it rested for decades inside a family coin collection before being rediscovered. We'll never know the complete story of any single coin. And that's part of what makes coin collecting so fascinating. The next time you come across a 1958 D Jefferson Nickel, don't rush to spend it. Take a closer look. Study the details. Check the condition. Examine the steps of Monticello. Because every collector knows that history often hides in the smallest places. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the story of the 1958 D Jefferson Nickel. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more rare US coin stories, mint errors, collector tips, and hidden treasures from American history. Until next time, keep searching, keep learning, and remember, your next great coin discovery could already be waiting in your pocket change. The 1953 D Jefferson Nickel. The forgotten 5-cent coin that every collector should know. Most people have seen one, most people have spent one, but very few people realize that an ordinary-looking 1953 D. Jefferson nickel could be hiding an incredible piece of American history. Imagine you're sorting through an old family coin collection. You find a worn 5-cent coin. The surface is dark from decades of circulation. Jefferson's portrait is still visible, but the details have softened with time. You turn the coin over and notice a small D mint mark beside Monticello. The date reads 1953. At first glance, it looks like nothing more than an old nickel. But this small coin has traveled through one of the most exciting periods in American history. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're uncovering the story of the 1953 D. Jefferson Nickel, a coin struck during a decade of rapid economic growth, expanding highways, television's golden age, and the early years of the Cold War. This isn't simply another 5-cent coin. It's a surviving witness to post-war America. To understand why this coin matters, we need to travel back to 1953, the 1953 D. Jefferson Nickel. Hidden details, collector secrets, and why this nickel still matters. Now that we've explored the history behind the 1953 D. Jefferson Nickel, it's time to discover why this small 5-cent coin continues to attract collectors more than 70 years after it was struck. At first glance, every 1953 D. Jefferson nickel looks almost identical. The familiar portrait of Thomas Jefferson appears on the front. Monticello, Jefferson's historic Virginia home, is featured on the reverse. And beside Monticello sits the small D mint mark, identifying the coin as having been struck at the Denver Mint. To most people, that's where the story ends. But experienced collectors know the real story begins when you examine the coin closely. Every Jefferson nickel tells a different story through its condition. Some examples spent decades changing hands in grocery stores, diners, gas stations, movie theaters, and local businesses. Years of circulation gradually wore away the highest points of the design. Jefferson's hair became smooth. The fine details of Monticello faded. The edges softened after thousands of transactions. Yet a small number of 1953 D nickels escaped heavy circulation. Some were saved by collectors from the day they were released. Others remained untouched inside old coin albums, bank rolls, or family collections for decades. These better-preserved coins are the ones that excite serious collectors today. One of the first features experts examine is the coin's original mint luster. When a nickel leaves the mint, its surface reflects light with a distinctive cartwheel effect. As the coin circulates, that luster gradually disappears. Finding a 1953 D. Jefferson nickel that still displays bright, original mint luster is becoming increasingly difficult. Another important characteristic is the quality of the strike. Not every coin left the mint with the same sharpness. Some dies were fresh and produced crisp details. Others had begun to wear, resulting in softer features. Because of these differences, collectors carefully inspect every coin before deciding whether it deserves a place in their collection. One of the most famous terms in Jefferson nickel collecting is full steps. Look closely at the steps leading to the entrance of Monticello. If those steps are fully defined and uninterrupted, the coin may qualify for the desirable full steps designation when certified by a professional grading service. This designation is especially admired because complete steps are much harder to find than many beginners realize. Even slight weakness during striking or a small amount of wear can prevent a coin from qualifying. Collectors also search for genuine mint-made varieties. Some examples may display die cracks, die chips, or repunched mint marks. These features occurred during the minting process and are completely different from scratches, dents, corrosion, or damage that happened after the coin entered circulation. Understanding that difference is one of the most important skills every collector should develop. If you discover an unusual-looking 1953 D Jefferson nickel, don't immediately assume it's rare. Compare it with reliable reference guides, and if necessary, seek professional authentication. Another fascinating feature is natural toning. Over decades, copper-nickel coins can develop attractive shades of silver gray, gold, champagne, or soft blue, depending on storage conditions. Many collectors appreciate these natural colors because every toned coin becomes unique. However, experts generally recommend never cleaning old coins. Cleaning removes the original surface, often leaving tiny scratches that permanently reduce collector appeal. Original coins with honest wear are usually preferred over cleaned examples. So, is the 1953 D Jefferson nickel worth searching for? Absolutely. Not because every coin is rare. Not because every coin is worth a fortune. But because it represents an important chapter in American history and remains a favorite among Jefferson nickel collectors. Most circulated examples are modestly valued, while exceptional uncirculated pieces, especially those with full steps or certified high grades, can attract much stronger collector interest. Every 1953 D Jefferson nickel carries a story. It may have been spent during the early days of television. It may have traveled through America's growing suburbs. It may have rested quietly in a family collection for generations before being rediscovered. And perhaps that's what makes coin collecting so rewarding. Every coin connects us with the past. Every date tells a story. And sometimes, history is hiding in the palm of your hand. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more stories about rare U.S. coins, mint eras, and hidden treasures that collectors continue searching for today. Until next time, keep searching, keep learning, and remember, the next great coin discovery could already be waiting in your pocket change. America was changing quickly. General Dwight D. Eisenhower had just become President of the United States. Families were moving into new suburban neighborhoods. Automobile ownership continued to rise. Businesses were expanding. Every day, millions of Americans relied on coins like the Jefferson nickel for everyday purchases. A single nickel could buy a newspaper, candy, chewing gum, or help pay for local transportation. Small change played an important role in daily life. The Denver Mint, identified by the D Mint mark, worked tirelessly to produce millions of nickels needed across the western United States. Each coin was struck using the traditional 75% copper and 25% nickel alloy, giving it the durability required for years of circulation. On the front appears Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States and the principal author of the Declaration of Independence. His portrait symbolizes freedom, education, and the ideals on which the nation was built. Turn the coin over and you'll see Monticello, Jefferson's famous Virginia estate, designed by artist Felix Schlag. Its elegant architecture has appeared on the Jefferson nickel since 1938 and remains one of the most recognized designs in American coinage. Now look carefully beside Monticello. The small D mint mark tells us this coin was struck at the Denver Mint. That tiny letter is an important clue for collectors. Millions of 1953 D Jefferson nickels entered circulation. They traveled through grocery stores, gas stations, restaurants, schools, and neighborhood shops. Many became heavily worn after decades of everyday use. Yet some escaped heavy circulation and survived in remarkable condition. These better-preserved examples continue to attract collectors today. Specialists often search for coins with strong original luster, sharp strikes, and the desirable full steps detail on Monticello. Although most 1953D Jefferson Nickels are common, exceptional high-grade examples and certain authenticated varieties can be much more desirable than ordinary circulated pieces. But that's only the beginning of the story. In the next chapter, we'll go inside the Denver Mint, explore how the 1953D Jefferson Nickel was manufactured, examine the features collectors look for, discuss genuine mint-made varieties, and discover why this classic 5-cent coin remains an important part of Jefferson Nickel collecting more than 70 years later.